So good evening, everyone. So I'm Tom Bragg. I'm Open Eco Homes manager. And as you'll see on the screen, we've also got Margaret Reynolds, an architect who's presenting, and Fran Sutton, who is new on Cambridge Carbon Footprint staff as our home energy officer. So it's great to have her working on Open Eco Homes and thermal imaging year round. And in fact, all three of us have been Open Eco Homes hosts. Here we are. So here's some context. So we have to expect more frequent and more severe heat waves. So that's why we're doing this. You probably know UK temperature record was last summer in Lincolnshire, 40.3 degrees. After they broke Cambridge's 2019 record. And I don't think this will stay for long. Temperatures are going to carry on rising. And in fact, with El Nino, we expect that the next few summers will be even hotter than you might expect from global warming. And so I read recently, so the chances of severe heat waves have doubled due to our carbon emissions, and it's expected they will at least double again by 2050. This is a bigger problem that's coming, or even so already, Office of National Statistics estimate that there were 3,000 odd heatwave deaths in England and Wales in last year's heat waves. So this is a serious problem for some people, and for many really uncomfortable. And we have to expect, I'm giving you the full problem, but we expect there will be cascading problems in the severe heat waves to come, that health and social care services will struggle, so will transport, roads will be melting and railway tracks will be buckling. So there may be quite severe disruption and, of course, effects on business and wildlife, the soil, natural environment. Okay, so here's what we're going to do about it.
Hello, and nice to see everyone. And to be thinking about summertime finally. I have noticed that the sun, when it does get through this year, it is very hot indeed. Things have changed quite a lot in the last 3 years that we've given this talk. We really have to be prepared, as Tom says, for 40-degree heat and over. So I'm going to look at two things, thermal mass and shading. And so I need to establish a couple of basics. So these will help us when we're looking at different cooling strategies. We're looking at how materials absorb heat and what their thermal mass is, and also the seasons and the daily sun on your house. So dense building materials, that's concrete, brick, and stone, absorb more heat and solar radiation, and then they release it slowly. This is what we call large thermal mass. In contrast, say metals, for example, conduct and release the heat really quickly. And of course, a substance like ice absorbs the heat and melts, but dense metals absorb and hold the heat. Insulation foam and timber generally absorb less heat. They have smaller thermal mass. Glass, and that's even double and triple glazing, can absorb and transmit heat. It can allow heat inside in the summer, and it can leak heat outside in the winter. And surfaces can reflect heat. Tom will talk about that a bit more later. But examples would be a light roofing material reflects more heat from coming into the building. And you can have solar film on glass to reflect the heat out or in. So let's apply this to a house in the summer. Let's assume your house, or maybe a room in your house, is cool. on the morning of a heat wave. How does that heat get into your house? Windows are a likely route in, but how? If the window is closed, the sun still shines through it, whether it's single, double, or triple. When direct sunlight gets through the glazing, it will shine on and be absorbed by any surface it reaches. You can see that on the left. There are spots of sunlight on the chair, on the floor, on the table. These surfaces will radiate that heat back into the interior of your house long after the sun has moved around and the window is in the shade. And the window itself and its frame will also transmit heat back into the room. So I've made myself some rules of staying cool. Rule number one is, in a heat wave, you want to block this direct sun. You don't want it to shine in the house and heat surfaces. So on the left photo, on the right-hand photo, the Venetian blinds are actually blocking those spots of sunlight from getting on the floor, on the table, on the chair. Something to note is that if you have early sun and it gets absorbed by surfaces in the morning, including the window glass, these surfaces will be radiating that heat back inside the house for all the rest of the day. So it's especially important to shade at 4 a.m. when the sun comes up these days. This means you want to position the shades in anticipation, I'll go back, the night before. But let's consider some other rules I have for summer cooling. It's not just that we want to block direct sun. In my opinion, we also want to have two further things. We still want to have daylight in the room. After all, that's why we have the window. And ideally, we still want to have a view outside. Now, with the horizontal blinds in the position on the left to block the sun, the position on the right blocks the sun. Some light is reflected up to the ceiling. So we get some daylight, but we can see outside, not perfectly, but a bit and enough. Perhaps, by the way, suppose the window is open to cool the house down early in the day. Should you leave it open during a heat wave? We'll get to that. So rule number 3, to stay cool, you need to know which parts of your home receive sun or light at what times. So this means days, is it morning or evening, afternoon or evening, and seasons in the summer and the winter. So this diagram quickly reminds us that the sun comes in at a low angle in the winter and a high angle in the summer. Clearly, if you want to keep out direct sunlight during a heat wave, you need to get used to a heating routine morning and evening. If you also know the outdoor temperature, or at least whether it's cooler outside the window than in, then you can judge whether to open the window or not. We do not want to be accidentally sucking hotter air into the house in a heat wave. I'll speak later about ways of cooling the air outside your windows. The simplest way to shade is to put something like a roller blind or other fabric over the window. But these don't follow my rules. I want to be able to see the view out and to get some daylight in, but still keep the heat out. So an alternative is these Venetian blinds. As we've seen, they can be angled to allow a view out to some extent. Here's an illustration of how horizontal blinds can affect direct sunlight. Sun in Cambridge comes at a maximum of about 61 degrees in the summer. This is the yellow arrows on the left. And by the way, the minimum angle in winter is very low. It's only 14 degrees from the horizontal. Horizontal blades of the blinds allow you to maximize or block the sun. So in the left The blinds let in a lot of sun. This could happen at 4 a.m. when you think the blinds are closed. In the middle, the blinds are horizontal, keeping the view and reflecting some light onto the ceiling. And on the right, the blinds are angled to block that sun angle, block any sun getting through. Blinds have a fair number of moving parts to keep aligned and to keep clean. And the blind blades themselves heat up in the sunshine, so they will actually transmit heat into the room. So let's look now at another kind of shading. This is external shading. The great advantage here is that the sun is blocked before it can heat up anything inside or the windows themselves. With internal blinds, as I said, the window heats up and the blinds themselves get hot, and both of these will warm the room. External blinds avoid this. So here we have in the top row of pictures, wooden slats on the outside of overhanging from the roof over a window. These keep the window glass cool from the high winter sun, but they maintain a view out. This house is a new eco house done by AC Architects in 2009. These are also called brise soleil, which means to break the sun. Now on the bottom below are shutters. 2 points to make about shutters. They can provide complete blockage of the sun and also ventilation in a secure and even elegant manner. Some shutters even have adjustable louvers so they can work like blinds, but on the outside. But the second point is that shutters are very common in many countries where it's very hot. But in the UK, a shutter requires windows that open inwards. And in the UK, inward opening windows are rare. For whatever reason, shutters are expensive in this country. But note this small image there of the renovated office building, again, of AC Architects, where they did install inward opening windows. Direct sun can also be screened by suspending fabric outside the window. Heat blocking mesh has been readily available for roof windows for some years. And in fact, if you have old roof windows, you can add these. And there are people locally who will do that. If you are interested, put a note in the chat. Velux or Facro windows offer what's called awning blinds that only transmit some 4% to 14% of the solar heat, claiming to offer 8 times more effective protection than internal shades, which is logical since it's what we've been looking at. On the left, a Facro roof light with no awning. In the middle photo, the awning blind is being put into place, and you do that by hooking this on the bottom of the window when it's open and then closing it. And finally, on the right is the external awning blind on the closed roof light with a view out, which I think is amazing since it stops so much heat getting in. These awnings stop the heat reaching the window frame and the glass, and they still provide light and a reasonable view out. Maintenance under the wear of wind loading, rain, grime presents significantly greater problems with external blinds in comparison to internal ones. These particular fabric awnings are stored in a metal cassette at the top of the roof window, rolled up. They are extended into place at the beginning of the hot summer weather, and then you leave them there until the autumn. This way, they stay cleaner all winter, and they're subject to less wear and tear. And as part of the roof light package, they're quite reasonably priced. It has so far not proved easy to obtain awnings for windows in this heat blocking material in this country. even though they're readily available for roof lights. Some of my clients will be making rectangles of this micromesh fabric, which they have bought as a roll of fabric. With eyelets, they will be hooking these to the outside of their window frames in the summertime. But so far, to my knowledge, such simple awnings are not available commercially, at least not at affordable prices. In fact, for that project, we had a quote of £1,800 per window, which is why we reverted to getting the fabric. So here are photos in the UK of fabric shades. So on the left there, the yellow ones are Harry Paticus. Of course, the color goes into the room, but anyway, it's quite dramatic. And then Bronwyn Barry, on the upper right photo, has sails, which you can just rig up from your house with poles. But it's quite it's an interesting thing to try. Finally, we have Alex Rice and his bamboo roll down shades on his house in Cambridge. And this house was one of our 2019 Open Eco homes. You can get very nice electric external blinds. And these are a view of Derek Ford's blinds that he showed a video of last year. This is a Mermet M-screen fabric blind. It's available locally. As he, I believe, got it at Cambridge Blinds, and I don't know the cost. And here, this is a view out from the inside the house through the windows with the external the vertical external blinds in place. Now we come to the video. Do we want to show this, Tom?
I think we're short of time, Margaret.
Okay, we'll skip it then. Okay, and then we can come back to it if people.
Sure.
It's a lovely video if you can see it sometime. Oh, there she is. Wait a minute. Okay. So in summary, you need to know where and when the sun comes into your house. And in a heat wave, you can make a big difference if you evolve a daily routine for blocking direct sun. And Tom will talk about ventilation, but they're opening and closing the windows is also part of that routine. Many forms of internal shading are available and flexible, but they do allow in a fair amount of heat. And external shading keeps the heat out more efficiently. It can be fixed or adjustable, but it has to be tough enough to cope with wind and rain and grime. And this inevitably means it will be more expensive. But of course, the total effect can be very satisfactory. So now I believe we're coming up to questions and answers about shading. Stop share.
Yes, so
Hi.
over to you, Fran.
Okay. So there was so we just had a question about installers for these blinds. And I think, Tom, you've put in the chat an installer that you know of for external blinds.
Who did a nice job on our Velux.
Mm-hmm.
But I should say...
That's mine as well.
Oh, good. But full disclosure, this company was an Open Eco Home sponsor. But nevertheless, we have personal experience of them doing a good job.
But you should also, from the Velux website, you should be able to find a list of installers. They should be able to link you with a list of people to go to. So I would start there as well. And Nick, you had a question about the accessibility option. Oh, were you talking about the Zoom, Nick? I think she might have been talking about the Zoom and not the...
I think it's the Zoom captions.
Yeah.
We're definitely looking to getting that right next time.
Okay. that was it I've seen for the questions so far.
So Sarah's just put up about not being able to fit external shutters because the window is outward opening.
Mm.
And I think that is an issue. Perhaps you could have an awning. That's so some shading above where your window opens. But otherwise, I can't see what you can do other than fit
if you
internal blinds.
try to go to very low energy windows, passive house windows, you'll find that most of them open in because they're for countries, they're made in countries where they're used to having shutters. And in fact, it's quite difficult to get outward opening window, low energy passive house windows in this country.
We have actually had them fitted on the inside of the windows, and that's with Velux, and that's helped a lot. So.
And they open in, Fran?
They open in, yeah. So, and that's been quite helpful.
The only difficulty I've had with that in places where I've installed them is that in the kitchen, where you inevitably have it over the sink, the window hits the tap, the sink tap. And at any plants you have on the window, it's a nuisance.
So I think we will have another Q&A session later, which you can ask us more on. I'm going to carry on then with.
There's a question about if you have external wall insulation, you can't fix anything through it. You can cut into external wall insulation. I have done it existing, and I did it for heat pump ducts, but you can put in what's called structural insulation, which is highly insulating, but it's also like a piece of timber or something, and you can fix to it. So it's a nuisance because you need to then replace the mesh, replace the render and the paint color and things, but it can be done. If you're hanging something as heavy as an awning blind on, you wouldn't just hang it off the render of external wall insulation, you're right. But you can get around that by inserting pieces of structural insulation into the external wall insulation and repairing the render.
Okay, so here is the next slide about ventilation. So I'm going to talk about how ventilation can really help keep your home cool in a heat wave. And as Margaret said, if it's hotter outside, then you do need to shut your windows. Even if it feels, it may be feeling hot indoors, but if it's even hotter outdoors, then keep your windows shut. And of course, this is usually in daytime on the sunny side of your house. And so when it's cooler outside, usually at night, that's the opportunity to really get your house cooled down. If you're in a multi-story house like this, it's great if you can to open a window or a vent or open something at the bottom of your house and at the top. And then you'll tend to get the chimney effect that will flush cold air from the bottom, and the hot air will escape at the top. Or maybe you don't have 2 stories in where you live, and so if it's single story, then maybe there's a way you can arrange to open windows on either side of your house, and particularly if there's a breeze that will flush the hot air out of your house. Or maybe you need to make use of a fan as well. Fans are low consumption in terms of electric consumption, especially compared to aircon. So do use fans if you need to get effective ventilation. And I have to, my heart goes out really to people who are in single aspect flats. So there's still plenty of new build flats they're facing south, don't have shading on the windows, so you can't get a through draft through this. Or we went round one recently that the only way they could get a through draft would be to open the door going onto the stairwell, which wasn't a secure thing to do at night. And in fact, the particular house we saw had hot water pipes due to solar thermal on this block of flats. Hot water pipes were heating up the back of the flat. She did get those better insulated, but it's a slight improvement. If you've got a window that will open at the top and the bottom, then you'll get some circulation like this. And if you could have a fan here, that would help blow the cool air to the back and the warm air will get out the top. But all sympathies for people who are stuck in a very sunny, poor to easy to ventilate, hard to ventilate flat. So we talked about the security of being able to open windows at night. So here are some regular kinds of window openings, and most of them can have secure fittings. So these will prevent the window being widely opened, so nobody can come in or out, but you are definitely letting the air in. And look for there's a general category called secured by design. So that's a good place to look for windows and doors that are secure. And of course, you may have sash windows that slide up and down. And there are systems. Here's one called Ventlock, which can be used to partly open a sash window, but it prevents anyone from outside opening it further. Okay, now a little bit about insulation. So here is a slate roof at nearly 74 degrees in a heat wave. So, and it's quite likely that you may well have a really hot roof on the surface. So plainly, you don't want that heat to get radiated down into your home. If you've got good loft insulation or good insulation under the roof, that will help. Because the heat, it's radiant heat coming down, it's not really a problem with convection. So this multi-foil insulation may be particularly effective. This sort of has 4 layers of shiny surface. And of course, insulation is important too on your hot pipes. Even in the summer, you probably want hot water. Make sure those pipes are well insulated. And now a little bit more about thermal mass. So as Margaret said, brick, stone, concrete, these heavy things can work to steady your indoor temperatures. So here's an example with, I'm looking at solid wall insulation. First of all, if you've got the insulation on the outside, that's useful from this point of view because all these tons of bricks have got lots of thermal mass on the inside of the insulation. If you've got a solid floor, that will also be thermal mass and may be good to have a tiled floor to let the cool underfloor keep you cool. And so in general, that will have a steady temperature. In contrast, if you've got internal insulation, then it's going to be great for quickly changing temperatures. Having a carpet may insulate your solid floor a bit, but in general, this would be quicker changing. And in the winter, that may be an advantage if you're coming home after work and want your rooms to heat up quickly. This kind of low thermal mass solution will help it warm up quickly. And so this is some temperature readings for my house in July last year in a heat wave. And so the red line is my measurement of the outdoor temperature. And as you can see, day on day, these 3 days of this heat wave, the temperatures, maximum temperatures went up every day. And also actually the nighttime temperatures were rising. This day was on the 19th of June was the day that there was the record 40-degree temperature. And my temperature sensor seemed to be saying a bit more than that, but I'm not claiming the record. I think I've got a sensor that isn't weather station quality. But have a look. We have an attic that hasn't got a lot of thermal mass. You know, it's got stud walls, and of course it's right under the roof. And so that was going up to 33 degrees on this worst day, quite uncomfortable. Whereas the blue line is our kitchen, which is downstairs, good thermal mass. And so without any aircon or anything, it didn't get hotter than 27 degrees, which I find really comfortable still. And so this is what you can do, but I would point out as well, though, the heat wave broke off after the 19th of June, and it got colder again. If this heat wave had carried on for a week, our temperatures would probably continue to have risen slowly. So the longer it goes on, it can be more of a problem. External surfaces. So this house here has a surface here that's 20, this one, in fact, is 21 degrees cooler. And here is the reason. So this house is white painted, pretty much identical terraced house with plain brick here. And the white painted one is, the surface of it is 21 degrees cooler. Of course, the rooms inside won't be that much different in temperature, but it really will make a difference. You can also see here that these houses had really hot roofs. Some are up in the 60s. And this one on the right had quite a hot door. It's got a grey coloured door that wouldn't have been as hot if it was white. You can see they're using white blinds inside, which is going to be a good idea. And of course, in the Mediterranean, white painted buildings are completely normal. They know that it keeps the sun out. This is a Cambridge house, but there aren't many like this. White painted, external shutters. This is a link to a blog. Any of these links you'll be able to click on when you get out the PDF of these slides. So one more topic about accidental heating. And so these are ways that you may need to think about. Maybe you could control of making your room hotter indoors. Well, of course, if you've got your boiler mounted indoors, that will be hotter than you want probably. Maybe it can be put in a cupboard. Cooking itself will put heat in the house, as will a hot water tank and the hot pipes, and your appliances, laptop, TV, etc. Your washing machine, maybe that is. And so all things that might be contributing to your heating indoors. And so maybe you can minimize that in a heat wave. Or another longer term thing is to, when you replace your appliances, choose efficient ones, because they will be heating your home up less. with accidental heating. You're probably used to these energy labels. They have changed recently. So here are two labels for the same fridge. And it used to be rated A+++, but because they were running out of categories, here is the new system of energy labeling. This one is now a C. And you can probably recognize the new labels because they do have a QR code on them. And of course, I don't need to tell you, switch them off when they're not in use. You probably don't want to do that with your fridge. And this is a good website, Sutton, which rates thousands of appliances and technical gear for their energy efficiency. So finally, personal cooling. So obviously your drinks, cool showers, fans, sprays, the way that you wear your clothes, particularly when you do go outdoors, will all help. Maybe you can put a hot water bottle in your freezer, not fully filled with water, otherwise, well, the expansion may be a problem, and then take it to bed with you. So, or maybe you can consider sleeping somewhere where it's cooler. If your bedroom is really hot, is there somewhere else? Maybe on the ground floor, maybe on the north side, where it would be cooler and more comfortable. So obviously, don't go rushing around exerting yourself outdoors if possible. And heat stroke, heat exhaustion can be a real problem. There's good NHS resources on that, which this is a link to. And so finally, can I suggest that maybe you can also look out for your neighbours. Maybe you're doing well on fixing these problems and you have a comfortable home, that maybe there's somebody who's old or young or vulnerable who you could be inviting to cool off in your house, or there's more NHS advice there. Maybe you can share some of these with them. Oh, okay, so I won't go on to that yet, Margaret. But oh yes, no, maybe we are going to this, Margaret, aren't we now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, right. So there's no poll or chat. Okay,
No.
so my screen again is so there. It's just me doing it instead of Tom. Is that okay?
Good.
Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to say a few words about the role of the ground outside our windows and the role that it can play in keeping the room cool. If we're lucky, this is a garden that we own, but it may also be that we can influence what is planted on communal grounds. So the way we get cooling usually comes from evaporating water. As the water dries out, it absorbs heat. We can use this to make a garden cool. The gardens tend to be cooler because the leaves transpire, as in the pictures here. This means they release water in the form of vapor through the leaves. And this vapor, water vapor, evaporates. And as it evaporates, it cools the air, just like air conditioning, really. So you probably notice that you go outdoors, it's going to be cooler, and some areas are significantly cooler. Evaporation from transpiration can make natural air conditioning. If we have lots of leaves, or if we can encourage the growth of lots of leaves. So leafy plants could be on 4 levels, really. You can have small perennials in the beds, low shrubs above and behind them, tall shoulder height shrubs, and then trees. But we need to find shade-loving plants to work in a tight proximity like this, but all these plants will hold moisture. Evergreen plants would also give us plenty of green in the winter. So ideally, if you can, you could structure the garden to make a green wall of leafy plants. It gives plenty of shade. And how do we help the garden to hold onto this moisture? The absolute last thing we want to do in a heat wave is to water the garden with tap water when we're going to be having water shortages. But we all use a lot of water every day. If we can get into a pattern of putting this wastewater on the plants every day, we can actually store it in those leaves. So washing up water is an easy source, but clearly we've got to stop using the dishwasher. We can scrub vegetables in a bowl, and that can be poured on garden plants. It's even possible to siphon off bath water with old garden hoses, primed from the tap and weighted below the bathwater level with stones, as you can see in the picture there on the right, and running downhill. Those are those two garden hoses running across my roof to the side border. This regular water can make strong plants that survive much greater heat. And in fact, I would say they grow luxuriantly in greater heat with plenty of water. It's like a jungle. If we store moisture in the garden, ideally we want to hold it in for a maximum benefit to the plant. So composting, even in a small garden, can be done with a tumbling compost bin that's safe from vermin. That's the photo on the left, the bottom left. Once you've got a compost culture going, you can tip 2/3 of it out onto a tarp or a sheet and put it around your plants in early spring or in the autumn to hold in the moisture as the weather heats up. By the way, birds love to peck at compost, and they also love to hide in the thick leafy garden borders, as we found out. And of course, there are also plenty of insects for them to eat. And if you could set up a bird bath, then they can bathe in that, and it helps them to cool off as well. So that's my little offering on garden.
I've seen there's a comment about a bit further up about roof lights.
Oh, yes.
And the issue of having rather large, sort of more difficult to cover curved roof lights. And the issue, if you cover them, then there's no light. So it wasn't a question, but it was a comment. I wonder if we could think about that.
Let's just see. Where is
It
that?
sounds really hard. I don't quite understand, Sarah. Which direction is this roof light curved? Is it sort of bulging outwards towards the sky?
I think this is from Catherine.
Oh, Catherine, sorry.
Large roof lights in the sitting room. The neighbor tarpaulin over there, so this gets rid of all the light. They are curved and approximately 2 meters by 1.5 inside. You might just try the people who do provide external light reducing mesh, like what they call awning blinds for roof lights, and ask them if there is any product that would work with a domed roof light on a flat roof. I think you may be stuck with an internal blind there.
So, Catherine, in the detailed PDF, another possible option would be reflective film, which you can put onto glass, and they stick on the glass very effectively. And they do cut out some of the visible light. You get them in different categories, but they reflect a lot higher proportion of the solar heat.
Just had a comment from Sonji saying that the biggest problem they had was their flat roof conservatory. Another flat roof on the south side of the house. Has anyone any thoughts on how to shade that?
So I have seen internal shading on conservatories.
Yeah.
Or also there's the material that Margaret showed, which is a sort of bamboo slatting, fine pieces of bamboo strung together that might sit nicely on a conservatory roof, keeping out the sun, cutting some of the sun daylight, but maybe that's worth having.
A tropical veranda would have wooden slats, slatted blinds on the inside, I suppose. If hopefully the flat roof isn't glass, because you will really fry in there. But you can get shades on the inside of roofs as well. They tend to sag. And there is this fabric that can be bought to put on the outside. And I think you can get it in pale colors too.
Another window question. Do we have experience with external tinted reflected films that can be fitted to glass to reduce solar gains? Which is kind of, I think, similar to what you were saying to Catherine.
Yes. So I have fitted them, but in systems that work on the inside of the glass. I fitted them to roof lights and in a garden shed too. There's again, in the detailed PDF that I've linked to, there is some further links to that, and to show, there's a nice video showing how it's fairly straightforward to fit this film to a sheet of glass, to a window, as long as you're a bit organised.
You just suggested using kitchen foil as well in an emergency.
You could get windows with reflective glass that either reflects it out in the summer in a hot area or reflects it in winter in a cool area, in a colder climate. But that's with new windows. I mean, you can add it to the windows, as Tom says.
We had a question about curtains as well and the role they play.
Well, what I would say about curtains is that they're generally solid, and so that blocks the light, and that's, I like to see out and I like to get some daylight. You probably could have light mesh curtains made of reflecting material, or the mesh that screens out half the sun or a great proportion of the sun. I've never seen anybody do that on the inside. No,
but you get some thin reflective curtains and blinds. But in general, if drawing the curtains can stop you overheating, then that may be a good choice. And they will probably work a bit better if the outward facing side of the curtains is a light coloured material, preferably white, and then it will reflect more of the heat. And if it's a thick curtain, then that will insulate you a bit from the heat that is seeping into your house there. Better than having the window with sun blazing in.
Yeah.
I have seen pictures of people sort of sewing reflective material to the lining of their curtains as well. So that is
that's
obviously a possibility out there. Not tried it. And there was a question about, going back to roofs, about, do we advocate living roofs or walls as being useful?
Well, effectively, what I was talking about in my garden is like a wall, but it isn't on a wall. It's just free plants that are layered upwards. I've certainly seen living walls in cities, which are brilliant. A lot of maintenance, though. I mean, all those plants need to be pruned and looked after, and they're all in pockets. They have to be irrigated and things in a hot city.
I was just having a think about blinds as well. So in our home we have blinds that have been put within the glazing. So when we came to replace the windows, it made sense to replace it. And so we replace, you tend to get them in businesses and things a lot more, but there's glazing internally, and it's just electric, and you just press it, and and that's been very useful for a bit of the thermal gain, because we're on the south side. Again, they're white, they're reflective back out, and they've been very useful as another option for if you're replacing glazing as an option out there. There's also solar. There is solar glass as well. More options for that these days.
Great
Good.
advantage of having those blinds in the sealed part of the window is, of course, they stay clean.
Yeah. But one of the advantages is because they're internal, you get the heat on the external part of the window, but actually when you come to the internal window, it stays, you can feel the difference. It does feel cooler, so that's quite useful.
A DIY awning, and featuring my wife Anne.
My office faces south, so when it's forecast to be hot, I like to put up an awning that I made in 2010 to shade the window. I lean out and hook some elastic loops at the top over hooks on the wall. Then 2 lengths of tube hold it out the bottom edge. I tension it all up with guy ropes attached to more hooks screwed into the outside wall at the bottom. It works very well, and the shade keeps the room cool. We have a larger awning downstairs, and this one is held out with guys to the garden fence.
So all the best then.